It was just different, but a good different. The camaraderie is what you miss. The neighbors, they were real neighbors. Nowadays, somebody lived next door, you never even meet them. The war was over, everybody was back to work. It just was different, just great. My name is Jimmy Hawkins, and I lived in Atwater. I was born in Atwater in 1941, right before World War II. I've lived here on and off all my life, so we've got a lot of history in our family with Atwater. I like Atwater. Now it's Atwater Village, and but I'm still Atwater. My mom was born in Edendale, which is like 5 minutes from Atwater, and she lived next to the Mack Sennett Studios in Edendale. Now it's called Silver Lake. We had a lot of people in the family that were in the motion picture business. There was uncles that worked for Charlie Chaplin, was his art director in all the silent films. My mom became an usherette in the theater district. And then she met my dad. He moved from Denver, so he became the assistant manager to the Orpheum, and that's how my parents met. And my mom knew right away, that's the guy. And my grandfather started a plumbing business, because that's what he did in Chicago. So he started one of the first plumbing companies here in Atwater, McMahon Plumbing. That's how our family started, and then we got the house at 3040 Atwater, and that's where all her kids were raised. I remember going through the war and collecting things, little victory gardens where you'd raise radishes, carrots, things like that. We collected grease. That was a big deal. They needed grease. So Atwater all got together, and then they took their grease someplace, and then it was shipped off to wherever grease went to, and whatever they did for that. And the same with foil. They needed a lot of foil. I remember chewing double mint gum, and it was wrapped in foil. So we'd save all the foils, and then each person, each house would build their little foil ball, and then they added it with all the other people in Atwater that were collecting foil, and they get a huge ball.
We're in to win, so let's begin to do the job with John.
And then one day, World War II was over, and my dad came home. He was in the service. Wherever you were working before the war, they had to take you back. And my dad worked at Universal Studios, and so he went back on the gang at Universal. My mom, because of her family being in showbiz, she always wanted her kids to become actors or get into show business. So my brother got in before I did, and when I was about 2, I got my first job at MGM Studios. And I did a few films out there, and then I got a film called It's a Wonderful Life.
Can you sing, Daddy?
Better hurry and shave. The families will be here soon.
We had to go out there for 12 days it took to do all the Bailey family parts for that. And I remember getting up in Atwater real early in the morning. It was dark, and then we'd get on the bus and then go to the streetcar and go all the way through LA to get out to Culver City. My mom liked the transportation in LA. It was very good back then. Every Friday night we'd go to Vandy camps because they had halibut. You know, we couldn't eat meat or anything on Friday. So we'd go to Vandy camps every Friday. I remember in 1949, the Foster Freeze on the corner opened. And it was, I think, on a Saturday. And between 3 o'clock and 5 or 6 o'clock, they gave away free 5-cent cones. Well, I'm telling you, every kid in the neighborhood was there. My brother got 56 cones. But I mean, there were tons of kids around. So my brother would roll up one sleeve and he'd shove them in both. So he'd get 2 at a time. And then the ends, when you get down to that last little thing, he'd throw it to our dog, Hubba. We used to fly kites. And we'd get a kite, and then we'd get this ball of string and see how far we could go. And I know while we were flying the kites, we run out of string. So we'd go to one of the factories and they would give us a spool of string. So then we'd let that thing go, and we got from Atwater Avenue, we got the kite to go to San Fernando Road in Fletcher to Vandy Camps. It was just trying that little tail was just keeping that kite up. But that was a big deal back then, kites. Kids would all play with kites. They'd run down the street with their friend and then hold it, and they'd get fast enough and boom, up it would go. And then to keep it up was a big deal. I became a yo-yo champion. I was real good with the yo-yo. I was CYO champion through Holy Trinity. When I was doing a series called Annie Oakley,
Annie! Annie, wait!
I had to go every year to get my contract renewed with the Gene Autry Company. One year, the LA Times was there to cover it and would talk about Tag Oakley, Jimmy Hawkins, and I was yo-yo's his way to a raise with the Annie Oakley series. I used to go to the Atwater Theater, and after the World War II, Gene Autry served for 4 or 5 years, and then he started up his career again, making all his movies. And we'd go to see the Roy Rogers movies. I liked him during the war. He was my favorite. I remember this big, huge screen at the Atwater Theater. You know, you'd sit there and watch a couple movies, then they'd have newsreels, and then they'd show a movie in 12 chapters. Every Saturday, you have to come back and see what happened the week before.
Serial.
Yeah, right, the serials, sure. We just grew up watching films, seeing newsreels, and your parents could just drop you off, and 4 or 5 hours later. The Lucas Kiddie Land, it was right there at the corner of Fletcher and Riverside Drive. It was kind of small, but it had a little Ferris wheel. It had a roller coaster, a lot of different rides and places to buy food. My dad would manage a lot of the personalities at KTLA, Doy Odell, Iron Ice Cody, Hank Penny, and he even went to Lucas Kiddie Land and made a deal with him that on weekends it would turn into the Doy Odell Kiddie Land. Okay. And all the stars from KTLA would appear there. They fill up the place for Saturdays and Sundays, talking to the kids, Doy Odell. I went to Atwater School until the 2nd grade. And then the 3rd grade, the Holy Trinity Parish started a grammar school. And they had 4 grades, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and then each year added another grade until they had 8. And you look back and say, well, how many people were in your graduating class in the 8th grade? It was 9 of us. And we were taught by the Immaculate Heart nuns. My brother and I went to Notre Dame out in the valley, and that's how we got our education. Rodger Young Village was like between the train and the horses and the merry-go-round. It was a big place. It was its own village. I mean, they had their own theater there, their own markets, everything. We'd go over there because we knew kids that went to Atwater School or something. We'd meet them, visit them. They all lived in quonset huts. Another thing I remember about Atwater is when the Freeway came in. And all of a sudden, they built a big mound about 5 or 6 houses down the street, and now the street is only 5, 6 houses long when it was 20 or 30. It went all the way to the river. And we would race up from Fletcher, get our bikes going, and then hit this hill that blocked it off, the street. And we'd use that hill to play with all the time. Make little foxholes and stuff. Just things that kids would make up. Today, they're on computers and everything. We didn't have computers. But I remember that street just got real short like that, and it was like that for a couple years before they even started to really do a lot of work there. But on the other side of that hill were those 10, 15 houses that went bye-bye like that, and we had a little short street. The great thing about Atwater is you felt safe at all times. You never locked your door. In fact, Vince's Market, we were big fans of their place. We'd get an order, and if we weren't home, Vince would come down, go through the back door, and put all the stuff away. I mean, it was just so family. Everybody was for everybody else. You know, it's only later it became dog eat dog. I was on one of the very first family shows on television back in the late 40s called The Ruggles. Live show, ABC at Prospect and Talmadge. We did it 3.5 years. We did 176 episodes, and they were all live. We did it twice because we were hooked up to the East Coast with this coaxial cable, and if our show was on at 7:30 in New York, we did it here at 4:30, and then we'd go to dinner and then come back by 7:30 to do it on the West Coast. I had done this. I'd done the Annie Oakley series for years. I did 8 years on the Donna Reed show, did Gidgets. I was either the boyfriend of every girl on television or the sidekick to Ricky Nelson, or I co-starred with Elvis Presley in a couple films. I started out at 2 and went up to almost 30, and I just got burnt out. I just didn't want to act anymore. I just had it, and I always wanted to produce. So the way I went out of acting was I took a troupe. I was asked by the USO to go to Vietnam and entertain the troops. So for 22 days I went all over Vietnam, wherever they took us, out on battleships, and we were everywhere. That was the last thing I did as an actor. Then I hit the road and I find out, how do you produce a film? And I was out at Universal visiting a friend of mine for lunch, and I said, what are you doing, you know? So I'm working with George Hamilton on a picture called Evel Knievel. Well, he's a motorcycle guy. He wasn't that famous by then, but he had made jumps, and I said, oh, really? That's interesting. So he tells me all about it, and I said, I can get the money for that. He said, yeah. I raised $700,000 to do the movie, and now I was going to get to see, first you got to get the money, get a writer, write a script, sell the script, get a director, do the whole thing. And so I got to see all the stages of making a movie. Now we have this little $700,000 picture about this motorcycle guy. The Grauman's Chinese is where Evel Knievel premiered. And the lines were around the block. They just caught on to this crazy guy, and for weeks it played there. And then it hit the road, and it made millions of dollars. It was really a big hit movie. So I got to see it, and I said, I like this. I like this producing thing. This is fun to make it all happen. So that's when I started producing more and more movies. I came back in the late 90s. My dad got real sick, and my brother had his family, and my sister had her family, and I was raised to just take care of people. So I did that, and then he passed away, and my mom, I just stayed on because we have a big house in the back and everything. And then my mom got dementia at 95 and lived 5 years, 6 days short of her 100th birthday. And that was interesting, taking care of her. But I've just been very fortunate all my life and very blessed. I have never wanted to do anything in my life that I didn't get the opportunity to do it. I may not have done it 1,000 times, but I did it, and it was very fulfilling. It's great, it's great. I've had a wonderful life. There's no doubt about it.